Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Sean, last week we talked about a little bit about Rare at Sea in the intro, and I have a story that I don't think you know yet.
Okay.
So on my way down, so we had to all meet up in Orlando, Florida. That's where we met up, right? And we went out to the port from there. So I fly down, I get to the airport in Orlando, I get in the aisle chair and get off the plane. My wheelchair is not there. It's usually sitting right outside the door, right? Like they bring it up and it's sitting there.
Yeah.
And it's not this time. And I think I had like a rookie, like person with me because they're like, all right, I think it might be done at baggage claim. I'm like, I almost said, no, please do not take me down to baggage claim.
Yep.
Like, can we just wait? But I just let him. I was like, all right, maybe he knows something. I don't know, but no. In fact, he did not know something. I don't know. So we get down to baggage claim, and the chair's not there. And he's like, oh, it'll probably be in a minute. All right. So we're waiting. All the while, I'm sitting in one of those transfer chairs that the airport provides.
And you can't move.
Right. It's got tiny wheels, so you can't like push it around or anything.
Right.
All you can do is maybe like put your foot on the ground if you want to like turn a little bit or something. So they call the gate, and the gate's like, yeah, it's right here. I'm like, oh my gosh. So they're like, oh, we'll send it down. Well, it came like 45 minutes later.
Holy cow.
So anyway, I mean, it was an hour, which is really annoying. You know, it obviously wasn't the end of the world because I did get to the hotel, but I don't want to sit around the airport for an hour or two waiting for my stuff. So
there's never a shortage of travel woes when it comes to disability, really. I mean, sure, a lot of other people have them too, but my goodness, they seem never ending in our world.
Yeah, and I feel like no one, like, people feel like they know what's going on, but if they don't have the experience, doesn't work out.
Yeah, so hearing you say that, I feel like I've learned something. This was a while back when my walker wasn't at the jetway like it was supposed to. I believe it was left in Sacramento. I don't know for sure, but I think they left it on the jetway when the plane took off.
Yeah.
So I didn't get it till the next day. Well, anyway, same thing. You know, we unloaded. I was the last person off the plane. No more luggage. All the baby, high chairs and strollers and not high chairs, but, like things people would typically get at the jetway. They had all disappeared. So one of the guys working was like, oh, let's go to baggage claim. Maybe it's down there. And of course, the whole way there, you're thinking, no, it's not there. So I feel like I've learned a pro tip that I haven't exercised myself, but I'm pretty sure it'll have more impact than going to baggage claim, is waiting on the jetway or on the plane. Because
totally,
I am convinced, that's obviously inconvenient for the airline because they want to keep moving. They're losing money when they're sitting at the jetway.
Yeah.
So I'm convinced that if it were to happen again, I'm not going to move just to make their life easier. If they've lost my wheelchair or my device or they've damaged it, then they should be working to make my life easier, not theirs and not business. So I haven't exercised that pro tip yet, but I'm pretty sure that's the way to go.
Yeah, and I've noticed that the crew, if they're switching out, they can't leave until I leave, right?
That's true.
That's when things start moving, when they realize that they have to help me in order to get on with their day, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot about that.
Second thing, we started using AirTags, me and you, right? And
Just
so
recently.
I have an AirTag on my chair right now. Nice. I didn't have it at that time, but if I did, I could have looked at my phone and been like, oh, it's like I'm gonna 10 feet away behind that wall right there or whatever. Well, like, please don't take me to baggage claim. So,
yeah, the AirTags make a difference for sure. You know, Kyle, talking about the cruise, I just, a travel story. We actually met somebody at dinner a few nights. I don't know if you remember, but my mom got to talking with another couple that sat next to us, and the gentleman's name is Brian, and he was like, hey, I found your podcast last night or whatever, and I noticed you do a lot of travel stories, and I can't wait to listen, because on that particular cruise, he had some travel mishaps himself. I don't remember what they were, the full story, but it had something to do with accessibility in his cabin room at the cruise line. I have a feeling, unlike you, that wasn't his fault.
Right.
But anyway, if Brian hears this, Brian, we understand your travel woes, and thanks for tuning in and finding us.
Nice to meet you, Brian.
There's always something, right? Even the hotel we stayed at in Orlando. Kyle, I have pretty good use on my legs still. So whether a bed is short or tall, like, I can manage. But bro, these beds at the Renaissance were so high off the ground that it was dangerous for me. I can imagine what it was like for you or maybe many other wheelchair users.
Yeah, they didn't give you the standard trampoline when you checked in.
Dude, and I don't know, I've never seen a hotel bed this tall.
Yeah.
I wish I would have measured, but I imagine 4 feet off the ground.
Yeah. I was rooming with my parents because the hotel rooms were kind of expensive, and we're like, we don't need to spend any more. Anyway, I had to have my dad help me into my bed because it was so high. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, insane. So just fair warning for those of you in Orlando, if you lean on or utilize a mobility device, their beds may not be suitable for you. I do want to wrap this up, Kyle, on a positive note. The cruise with Rare at Sea, absolutely phenomenal. And makes all the little frustrations or nuances, annoyances, makes it all worth it. We had a great time.
Yep, I agree. Dude, one thing, obviously the most incredible and valuable thing was connecting with other people.
For sure.
And to facilitate that, the crew on the ship was phenomenal. Like, I didn't hear the word no ever, not a single time. Everything we did, it was like, oh, we're an hour early to dinner. Oh yeah, no problem. We can see you right now. Like, can we get this? You got 2 desserts multiple times.
That's pretty common on a cruise. You can do what you want.
But yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, great time.
Well, Sean, we need to move on to an awesome and informative conversation with a fun and energetic friend. I met Derek Ansel at a rare disease conference, and he's become a friend and an incredible resource. Enjoy our conversation with Derek. Derek, we are so glad to have you today. You know, we've been trying to do this for over a year now to have this conversation. We're excited to have you on the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
No, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan. I was excited to do it last year, so thank you again for inviting me back due to sickness last year. So glad to be with both of you today.
Hey,
It
Derek, I'm
happens.
going to put you on the spot. I know this is a bit self-serving, but, you know, you and I have not met. So for the listener's sake, Derek said, you know, he listens. And when he got on in the studio this morning, he showed me probably my favorite thing. So, Derek, what'd you get this morning?
I got Starbucks this morning. And I knew that you would appreciate that because I know that you're equally obsessed with Starbucks. But there's been a particularly bad snow and ice storm here in Philadelphia, and I feel like I've been going stir crazy, and I have not had my Starbucks in a long time. So this morning, when I knew that I was meeting both of you on the podcast, I thought I'd treat myself, walk through the snow to get a Starbucks. So yeah.
Oh, wow. So do you wait, walk from your house or like through the parking lot? Like, do you live close to one?
I do. I live in the city. I live in Philadelphia, so definitely not moving my car anytime soon because the snow is just, it's everywhere. So yes, I walked in, I think 9-degree weather, but it was worth it. I think you would agree.
And you got a cold one.
I did.
I love that.
Little frostbite in my hands, but that's fine.
Yeah. You know, I'm not going to lie, but Kyle, you should know this too. You know, our plan was to be sitting in Philadelphia with you right this moment. Plans changed. The weather was not conducive for that travel. Just a lot of things, it just didn't happen. But I went into the week thinking, how in the world, where is my coffee going to come from? Because being there last year, I know, at least last year, there was not a Starbucks nearby. And even if there was one nearby the hotel, when it's snowing and icy outside, it's not like you run to Starbucks real quick to get a coffee. So I was a little nervous. So for that reason, I'm relieved to be at home where I'm a block away from mine as well.
It's too funny. Next year, you'll have to let me know. We can do a Starbucks run so you can.
Yeah, maybe.
You're definitely in a Starbucks desert where you record, so I know where you're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, next year we can hit you up with some Starbucks delivery.
I won't forget that. Thank you very much, Derek. All right, seriously, business. Kyle's like, are you guys done yet?
Oh, man. Yep. Love it. So, Derek, we brought you here to talk about CROs because a lot of the CRO, what the heck is that? Like, that's 3 letters, and a lot of people don't even know what that is, but you guys play an important role in the drug development process, specifically in your case for rare disease. You've been in the CRO world for a long time, and so can you just tell us what is a CRO, first of all?
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think we love a lot of 3-letter acronyms in the world that I work, so happy to define any of them. CRO is a contract research organization, and we work very closely with the pharmaceutical and biotech industry in drug development. So I like to kind of use the analogy of, building a house. The pharma companies or the biotech companies kind of give us the materials to build the house, but the way in which we build the house, the way in which we follow certain regulations is really dependent on my organization, the CRO. You've seen, I'm sure, thousands of different homes and different styles and different number of stories and materials and whatnot. And I think that's a really good way of explaining, a CRO versus a pharmaceutical company. So we really help supply and support the clinical trial or all of the aspects required for getting a drug approved. So some companies might need what we call full service or end-to-end support. They simply have a drug and that's it. They need everything else required to support getting that drug approved in a rare disease, if you will. Other companies kind of have an idea of what they need and what they want, and they might need us just for regulatory support or data analysis or just resources across the globe. So it really does depend, but I like to think of us as, again, like a custom house builder, if you will. Um, and I hope that kind of gives a good idea of maybe a good example of the type of work that we do versus kind of a pharmaceutical company.
So the way I think of it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I probably am wrong, as Sean knows, but so a big pharma wants to do a trial, and they might not have the specific assets or platforms to manage all the data or do the FDA filings that are required or provide for patient travel.
Yeah.
And kind of lay out the whole experience for the patient. And so, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's maybe is what you just said, but that's what's in my mind for what you guys do. Is that kind of in the ballpark?
Yeah, you're exactly right. We really sometimes these companies are so small, they don't always have the expertise required to get a drug approved. There's a lot needed, a lot of time, effort, and money to get any drug through the drug development process through final approval. Larger pharmaceutical companies, sure, certainly have the resources to do this on their own. But if we're talking about a small, very nimble biotech focused in a rare disease, they don't often always have the expertise, or they might have the expertise, but they don't have the headcount or the resources, or to your point, the technology, the infrastructure to get that drug through clinical trials, through submission, and through approval. So we kind of, again, like to think of ourselves as working in parallel with our pharma partners with the end goal of getting that drug through clinical trials and through approval.
Derek, could you tell us what you do in this space?
Yeah, so I work at a CRO, obviously called Worldwide Clinical Trials, and my team and I sit in the group called Therapeutic Strategy. So we're at kind of the front end, if you will, of drug development, where a company who has a drug, and again, I support rare disease, which, Kyle's how I met you, but I also am starting to support a lot of oncology assets within the company as well. So when the pharmaceutical company has a drug and they're interested in pursuing it in a rare disease, I'm kind of the first line that they meet within worldwide clinical trials. So we have a very upfront conversation around what their drug is, what are their commercialization goals, what is that rare disease, what's the standard of care, who are the doctors that treat, diagnose, know these patients, what is that kind of diagnostic odyssey, and how does that impact their drug development pipeline, if you will. So we're kind of strategists. We kind of sit between the med affairs, commercial operations groups within Worldwide, and we kind of educate all of those teams on the importance or the challenges that we're going to have in designing or implementing or running a clinical trial on behalf of that pharmaceutical company. So a lot of what I do is I engage with those industry stakeholders, again, understanding what they're trying to do, and then translate that into our operational teams. we work in a lot of rare diseases, but there's not been a lot done in every single rare disease. And I know I'm preaching to the choir a little bit. So a lot of what we do is educate, educate the pharmaceutical company, but also educate our internal teams. We help kind of strategize the best way to get that drug approved. That's our goal, is to get that drug approved and have patients be able to access and utilize that drug. So I hope that kind of gives a good idea of we have a wide variety of groups. We're around 4,000 employees globally, but we're kind of that first line of understanding what they'd like to do with that drug, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, I'm curious, what keeps you in this space? Like, what excites you about the work that you're doing?
Oh, I think I have the best job in the world. And I'm not saying that because I know that they're listening to me and they're writing my paycheck, but I love the pace at which one research is moving. When I first started in rare disease, I felt very limited. I just felt like the access to information and innovation was so limited. Now I feel we're in a world where I might be approached by a pharmaceutical company in a rare disease where there are approved products in that rare disease now. I mean, how cool, right? Whereas when I first started in the industry, I just felt like we were running these clinical trials, but there was no approved product on the horizon, or there was no one actually providing an innovative therapy such as gene therapy or gene editing. So I think the promise and the evolution in rare disease kind of keeps me very motivated. But we work across all rare diseases. So one day I might be supporting a team in cystic fibrosis. The next day I'm supporting a team in how are we enrolling a von Willebrand program, or how are we thinking about intrathecal administration and a neurodevelopmental disorder for pediatrics. So the pace of the different projects we have at a CRO is so fast that I'm motivated by the innovation that we're seeing. I'm motivated by the types of drugs that we're, supporting development of, but also just the wide breadth that we're seeing this innovation across clinical research for rare disease. So that's what keeps me motivated. I think being able to meet leaders in the field and go to conferences and meet patients directly and have very candid conversations around what motivates them to enroll in clinical trials is a big part of my job. Taking those patient insights to make a clinical trial more efficient, more equitable. So learning from the community, I think, is an immense honor. So not only do I get to see that cutting edge treatment and innovation from our pharma partners, but also working kind of hand in hand with our patient community. So again, I think I really have the coolest job ever. And that certainly keeps me motivated every day.
Derek, I love the focus on rare disease for obvious reasons, but also it's a huge need because I'm just thinking, there's 10,000 rare diseases. There's no way your team can know all of them, right? And so your responsibility, it sounds like, is to, when you guys encounter a new disease, to learn as much as you can. What is your process, or I don't know, just maybe your mentality around when there's a rare disease that you've never heard of before, and you've got to learn as much as you can about it to understand this disease and the people it affects?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it kind of goes back to when I first started, I felt like that information was very limited. Now I feel like the access to learning about a rare disease is quite literally at our fingertips. So, of course, we do a deep dive into the literature. I feel like, again, anecdotally, I feel like we are building on our literature every single day, and it's quite impressive to see how much we've grown in genetic conditions, for example, around genotype phenotype correlations. It's impressive to see that. But I think our Rolodex has gotten really, really large. So we might not have heard of that rare disease, but we can find a physician who knows a physician who happens to be the key opinion leader in a country that we will kind of onboard as a consultant to train our team. Kyle, I know you've been a part of this, but often we'll invite patients to our company, whether on a large platform like the meeting we had last week or specific for a clinical trial. As our team is getting prepared to run a clinical trial in a rare disease, part of that onboarding is training them based upon what we find in the literature, but also in our collaboration with leaders, with patients or caregivers, but also those leader physicians that we engage with all the time. So I say it's multifactorial. We do have, medical professionals and experts internally within the company, but sometimes and quite often, to your point, Kyle, we have to go outside of the company to get that knowledge. And it's that use of consultants, whether they're patients, caregivers, or physicians, that really supplement our training, knowledge, and understanding of the disease.
I also imagine, and because you're friends with a lot of people in the rare disease community, and I feel like a lot of times it's like, oh, I think I've heard of that before, but let me ask my friend, and they'll ask their friend, and then all of a sudden 10 people down or whatever, it's like, oh, we found someone who has this disease. Let's make that connection. And I think the networking effect of the rare disease community is a pretty good way to do that too.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you say that, because we have a lot of initiatives within the company to be better than we are today in rare disease. And I'm quite excited to be a part of an organization that is really committed to that growth in rare disease. And one thing I've learned is just how interconnected everything is. To your point, I might be reading a paper on a disease and I recognize a name that I see from a different disease, and it's like, well, how did that get there? Or to your point, I might be talking to a genetic counselor I see at a conference who references the same people I just spoke with a month ago, and it's just that again, that Rolodex of the rare disease community is quite small, but at the same time not at all. But it's interesting to see how there are connection points and leaders and stakeholders, regardless of the disease, impacting the entire rare disease ecosystem. But you're right, it is someone knows someone who can help you. And I just love that enthusiasm that it might not be for my particular disease or your particular disease, but if it kind of raises that, I'm terrible at sayings, but what's that, raising waters for raising ships. Yeah, I think
all boats or something.
Yeah. Right, we all know what I'm talking
tides is in there somewhere.
Yeah, turning the water on, right, lifts all boats, something like that. And I think that's really important for the rare disease community. I think that's what we see time and time again, and I think it's through those connections that make it so much more powerful and meaningful, for sure.
I want to switch gears a little bit, because I know you were trained as a genetic counselor, and I think there's an underappreciation for genetic counseling, starting with, and I have personal experience, because at first I was like, genetic counseling, like, I've never seen a genetic counselor. I have a rare disease. What do we even need those for? And the CEO of Farah is a genetic counselor. Our patient engagement person is a genetic counselor, and I have firsthand knowledge of the incredible value of genetic counseling. So I'll just start with that. But you said something earlier briefly. You said diagnostic journey and sort of how that fits into drug development. I wanted to just sort of, I guess, first of all, how does the diagnostic journey fit into drug development?
Yeah, I can see where you're going with this, and I'm getting excited. One of the challenges we have with drug development is our ability, or sometimes lack of that ability, to find patients to enroll in our trials. As you know, rare is rare. It's often difficult to find patients globally in certain disorders, right? Incidence and prevalence can be very different regardless of the genetics. And even the infrastructure for a diagnosis can be impactful for what are the true patient numbers we actually see in certain communities. And that's probably a conversation for another day. So if we are working in a rare disease that has a very undefined diagnostic odyssey or a very challenging diagnostic pathway, which, let's be honest, is probably the vast majority of rare diseases, those discrepancies are kind of multiplied when you look at different countries and different healthcare systems and different paradigms around genetic testing. All of those layers kind of add up. And if I use the example, the US or Canada or Mexico or South America might have a well defined diagnostic odyssey, but that doesn't mean it's replicated throughout the globe. So when we are running global clinical trials, we have to be very mindful that the challenges we see and the successes we see in one country probably don't exist in every single country. So I think the diagnostic odyssey, yes, makes sense. We need more patients to be diagnosed to enroll in our trials, but it goes beyond that. It goes beyond more than just finding patients. It's everything else that aligns into that. Again, that infrastructure, healthcare, insurance, all the various stakeholders involved in finding and diagnosing patients, and time enough for equitable treatment, but also potential enrollment in a clinical trial.
Yeah, that diagnostic journey is so well, diagnosis itself is crucial, right? Once you know what you're up against, you can better target how to treat it or how to manage it. And
Exactly.
if you don't really know what you're dealing with or what is causing the concerns or the symptoms or the issues,
Yeah.
it's like shooting blind.
Right. And
Is that a saying? Do people say? I don't know.
No, I agree, and I think sometimes that diagnosis, and not I think, but that diagnosis can also impact accessibility to care, right?
Mm,
They're especially if you're looking at a child who needs educational support or resources at school, often if you don't have a diagnosis, you're not getting that additional care. So it not only impacts that that confirmation that yes, you do in fact have a diagnosis, but it certainly impacts the kind of care and treatment you will not receive if you don't have an accurate
sure.
diagnosis. So it's very important for not only just to enroll in a clinical trial, but also to receive the care that so many patients need.
And even before care, like some diseases, there's like some of our friends, there's no standard of care. There's no recommendations from doctors. There's not even a whole lot known about it.
Mm,
And someone gets diagnosed. Now they have a target, like Sean said, and they can go after that and be like, all right, let's get some experts together. Or maybe there's one person who knows how to spell my disease. Let's talk to that person. And then let's develop some guidelines for clinical care. And like it just, the ball starts rolling, but it can't start rolling until you get diagnosis.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that diagnosis is so important even for diseases that, to your point, have no treatment guidelines, have no advocacy organizations, are not defined at all. It starts creating that community with a community, and which sounds odd, but it really, I think, is the spark to so much. If we don't understand in drug development the diagnosis and the natural progression of the disease, the likelihood of being successful in creating a drug that will treat any of those symptoms is minimal. So, again, not only is the diagnostic journey important for everything that we've mentioned, but it also kind of dictates what does that clinical
Mm.
drug development pipeline look like? What do we target? How do we target? So it is very, very important, regardless of where you are again, in drug development, not in drug development, you're a rare disease patient or treating a rare disease patient. And we can even take rare out of there. Yeah, even just being a patient and having a diagnosis is important, as obvious as that sounds. But there are widespread implications, again, to treatment, pre-treatment, as you mentioned, that are just so important that I think we often forget about. So I think it's punctuated in rare disease, but it for sure affects non-rare disorders as well.
Well, we hit on a lot of things in drug development and the process. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, going back to clinical trial. I know I'm jumping all around here, but going back
No
to
worries.
clinical trials and your role as a CRO, I wanted to ask you, what's some practical advice that listeners might be interested in if they're interested in getting involved in clinical trials and pushing research along and developing treatments? What is some advice that you would have when they're thinking about getting involved?
Ooh, that's such a good question. There's so much to do. I think even with the clinical research field is a very regulated, well-established field, but we always need help and support from anybody. I think if you are in a medical profession, for example, and you're looking to get involved in clinical research, I think there's a number of organizations like mine that are constantly looking for kind of outside individuals to kind of join us, right? So there are kind of tried and true path, typically you work in an academic institution and start to get some clinical research, clinical trial experience. But we're always looking for those who have kind of relative medical experience or just the understanding of the regulations involved. And often you get that experience at, an organization that's running a number of clinical trials. I think if you are, a rare disease patient or again, a patient with just an interest in learning more about clinical trials, I always advocate for speaking with your physician. And I know that sounds a little cheeky, maybe a little dumb, because one of the things we often talk about is not every physician knows about clinical trials. But what I'm really like my soapbox is always on public education for clinical trials. And I think COVID, for better or for worse, really put clinical trials on the forefront. I remember, I'm a terrible social media user, but it was the first time I saw like the word serious adverse event on social media. That is a very industry term. Again, you mentioned CRO is a three-letter word. Another one is called an SAE, serious adverse event. That's a very industry, like you got to be in the know to know what that means. And I was shocked to see it in social media. But again, it was great to kind of see the public kind of talking about like a very industry specific term. So I think if you are, in the community and you're wanting to learn a little bit more about clinical trials, there's a lot of government websites that will, educate and discuss clinical trials. But I think the gatekeeper to many of our clinical trials are our physicians. So I think if you're able to kind of speak to your healthcare community, a genetic counselor, if you will, kind of talking about what is a clinical trial, because I often worry about kind of the misconceptions of what a clinical trial is. You can go on Google and type in, especially with AI now, you can pretty much get a search result of what you want to see, if you know what I mean. So I often worry, again, there's a lot of information out there, but it might not be the most uh, precision based or focused on you type response that I think a physician or healthcare professional can kind of give to you. But there's a lot out there, right? If you go to NIH, if you go to clinicaltrials.gov, literally clinicaltrials.gov, there's a lot of great information around what a clinical trial is. But often the biggest gap we see is that connection with our providers. That would be my first. Again, if you're a patient or a community member that's looking to learn a little bit more, I would go that route. But if you are kind of a medical professional or just want to get more involved, I think even working with either organizations like mine, pharmaceutical companies, or nonprofits, patient advocacy groups are focusing more on getting their communities clinical trial aware or clinical trial ready. And there's some opportunities to help support those communities get there as well. So that was kind of a vague response. Hopefully that was helpful, but I think there's a lot of opportunity in drug development to either get involved or learn more.
Derek, you have taught us a lot today. You know, we talked about drug development and this term CRO and what that means. We also talked about how important Starbucks is
Very.
for the daily life of a Sean or a Derek. We also talked a little bit about diagnosis and how important it is in a lot of different aspects. And then, as always, we talked about how it relates to us and what we should do right now. Talk to our doctors. So, we've covered a lot of ground today, and we really appreciate the conversation and your engagement with us today.
Thank you.
Hey, Derek, thanks for joining us and being part of the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Again, I was looking forward to this for over a year, so I appreciate you letting me come back on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I was very much looking forward to chatting with you both today. Thank you.
Well, Kyle, such an easy conversation to have. Derek was incredibly easy to talk to, and I love that he loves Starbucks as well.
Yep.
And of course, I love his passion for helping and being a part of the process in any which way he possibly can. So, Derek, thank you so much for joining us today and being a part of the conversation.
Yeah, it was a fun and easy conversation, and he's got such a depth of knowledge. Like, he could talk circles on any of these subjects, right? Like, it's a rabbit hole, and it's a wonderful rabbit hole with Derek.
Yeah, I feel like he'd be a lot of fun to meet in person someday, share a coffee with or a drink, and just pick his brain a little bit more. Of course, Kyle, you know, as well as many of our listeners, we like to end every episode with a note of gratitude. We call them thank you notes. We know that gratitude helps keep us grounded. So, Kyle, I'll let you go first. Who's your thank you note going out to today?
I want to thank Mother Nature. I've been cursing Mother Nature for several weeks now because it's been so stinking cold here in Philly. Yeah. But yesterday and today, yesterday was like in the 60s. Today was 70, over 70 degrees and sunny. And I think when the winter is terrible, it makes the spring that much better. I felt so good. I felt like I was thinking more clearly and more positively just because of the sunshine. So thank you to Mother Nature.
I imagine that helps. And speaking of today, I was out and about in the middle of the afternoon, which is uncommon, right? During the work week. For the first time this year, or this season, I actually turned my AC on today, driving around. It was pretty warm.
Wow, nice. That's a good sign.
Speaking of being in the car, the reason why I was driving around in the middle of the day is because I had a friend and a Nissan Stairway team member join me today at the gym. Taylor agreed to keep me company on our 3,000 step Stairmaster session. And that took a minute, but she was like, yeah, let's go. So I appreciate Taylor being willing to be there and to join me, take a little video here and there. Of course, she was way faster than me, so, you know, she was finished before me. But having somebody else just allows the time to go by a little bit faster, but also you're a little more, or at least for us, we were a little more intentional about thinking through things that we need to be aware of come July. So just pacing, you know, body stretching, foam rolling, you know, just thinking about those kind of things that are going to maximize or optimize our abilities. So I really appreciate Taylor's perspective and her willingness to climb 3,000 steps with me at the gym today.
Yeah, that is huge. How do you feel after that?
My legs are incredibly tired today, but I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
In the moment, it's exhausting, it's warm, and I don't want to do it. Once you hit like 1,500, it's like, okay, are we done yet? But I feel like I'm on a good track.
Yeah.
To conquer those stairs in a couple months.
Nice. So you have a few training sessions a week.
Yep.
I understand. And one of them's the big one.
Yeah.
What are the other ones? Like you have 3,000 steps this week.
Yeah.
What are your other sessions?
So that's the big one. The two small ones are going to be 1,600 and 1,800. So those are a little more manageable during the work week.
Yeah.
But my days off, it's very time consuming to do 3,000 steps plus stretching and whatnot. So I saved the big one for my days off.
All right. Well, thank you, Taylor, for accompanying Sean today. Of course, a big thank you to Derek for joining us on this episode. Check out our show notes for links to Derek and his work. If you like this episode, share it with a friend, and please subscribe. It was cool. We looked at our analytics yesterday, and we got to see how many followers there were, and it's really valuable. And so we encourage everybody to follow, especially on Apple Podcasts, but really anywhere is really valuable. So thanks so much. Until next time, keep living with urgency. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to stay connected.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast player.